For the Green Line today?
Well, I think this was one of the biggest. I mean, getting the federal announcement was absolutely huge, but the city had to come forward. We had to say this is a priority, and this was the only way in which we could actually come forward and say this is our way of moving forward and making things better for upwards of 465,000.
Now, you mentioned at the bottom it says our funding $52 million for an extra 20 years should the provincial government. Is it only if the provincial government, or is this money going to come from the city?
That may be a decision we'd have to look at in the future, but the notice of motion stated that it is contingent on their support. We hope they would come through with financial support, but certainly they support the project. And I think when it comes back, the city is going to have to say, you know what, we're going forward, we're going to do this, and this funding would be committed regardless.
Your interpretation of how the debate's going so far?
Oh, it shows again once where we get into opinions which are incorrect or just opposed for the sake of being opposed. But when you look at all of the stats, all of the information this is the only thing that we should be doing, and the Green Line is essential for the future development of Calgary.
What do you say to concerns about the burden it puts on property taxpayers?
Well, it's there already. There is no burden. It's built in. We understand, and we have to really get back to the initial point back in 2013. This was not an increase in property taxes. It was a transfer from one order of government to another. That was already in whatever the property tax was at that time, and it hasn't changed. So it's still there. And the only way, in all honesty, the only way it would change if council voted to reduce taxes by $52 million, which, again, this was better than that. So I don't think it's a burden.
Did I hear you say you're hopeful too this doesn't come down to north and south like some previous debates in the past?
Yeah, well, absolutely. It started a little bit today, and we had that issue of and then ignoring the facts. What happens is when you have councillors who quote one bus line only, which is the 12,000. They forget about all the express buses that come from the south. They forget about all the buses that leave the south and go straight to another LRT line. And they forget about the number of residents who drive from the south over to the south central line because they can't drive down to the core. So when you look at bits and pieces of information, you can say what you want. But if you look at it in totality, this is a huge win for the southeast and the north central.
Councillor, just to clarify, so the city's commitment is based on the province's support, but that doesn't mean 1/3 of the budget.
That's the way I would like to interpret, but I think it would come back to council for another vote on that one. But that's the way it's written. It's based on their support, not their financial support, but we have to make sure that's clarified, and I would never go forward with that intent without having council's decision and saying, we have to go forward. Because the other crucial thing is if we don't commit this $1.5 billion, we realize that the federal contribution drops extremely because their commitment is for 1/3 of the project. So, I mean, we could be, if the province, which I think is not a wise move, doesn't come on board, if the province don't come forward with their portion, we could have the 1.5 from the city, and then depending on the price, what we could do, we would only get maybe 500 million, 700 million from the feds, and it's absolutely ludicrous for us to walk away from 1.5 in additional funding.